Look at this tiny little chicken egg. So it's been a while, a couple weeks since I've filmed. It almost feels awkward again to be talking to a camera. Kind of had another cold snap, so not a whole lot was going on in the garden. And the weeds kind of took over, so the things that could have been planted during that time, I didn't because I hadn't weeded yet, and I didn't weed. Well, I'm doing it now. Better late than never. So ideally with no-till gardening, you would have like a tarp that covers the garden to kill any weeds so that you're not hand weeding like I am. But a tarp big enough to cover our garden would cost at least $200. So we had a little tarp, and I'll show you what the little tarp was able to do. This square right here that is not green was covered by that black tarp for 4 to 6 weeks. It would have looked like that if we didn't cover it instead. Well, there's still things coming up. That is milkweed. In the past, we've let it grow in this patch of the garden for the monarch butterflies. And I think I'm going to again, just this patch, because I'm also going to plant my sunflowers here and climbing beans. So it's okay if there's other tall things growing amongst them. And yesterday, these 3 beds looked exactly like these. Oh, you can't really see very well because of the shadow, but they looked just like these beds, these 2. And I used the pitchfork to get like the taproot kind of weeds like dandelions and yellow dock. And then for the little weeds, like that, I use this Stirrup Hoe, I think, and you just go like that, and it kind of, this is kind of like a blade that goes very shallow in the soil to rough up any little weed roots, and then the sun dries them out and they die. Look how nice it looks now. It only took several hours. So I think these 3 beds that I weeded yesterday, I'm planning on putting my tomatoes on this end of the garden that I'm standing in because this side gets more sun, and then my kale and cabbage on the other end that gets a little less sun. I'm not sure if I'm going to get around to planting all of that today or if I'm going to spend a whole nother day weeding, because I also want to get those beds over there. You can see my attempt at mulching it with cardboard to kill the weeds, but with nothing holding down the cardboard, they kind of blew around, and yeah. So now I have to weed those today because I want to get my squash in the ground, because the squash I planted indoors pretty much looks terrible. I don't know if it's even going to survive or if it's even worth planting. Yeah, these are my squash seedlings. I don't know, their leaves got yellow, then kind of shriveled up. Now they have these like dead patches on them. They looked fine at this stage, And then once they got these, like their true leaves, they're yellow and shriveling up and dying. I don't know if it's a fungus, I don't know if it's a nutrient deficiency from the soil that I used, which would be kind of dumb because it was expensive. Anyway, like pretty much all my seedlings, all my vegetables are doing terrible, and my flowers and herbs look fine. Like here's my sunflowers, jammin'. Here's another type of flower, jammin'. Chamomile, great. Sage and cosmo flowers, great. Well, the lettuce did okay. But like this is the third round of cabbage and kale because they kept doing the same thing as the squash is doing now. It's very discouraging to spend so many weeks planning and putting in the work and then having it fail. But what can you do? I mean, at least this squash, I plan on just, I don't even know if I'm gonna plant those squash. I think I'm just gonna weed the area where I was gonna put the squash and then stick the seeds right in the ground, because I think by the time, like if I planted these, they'd probably recover, but would it be any faster than just planting a seed in the ground? I don't know. I also last week picked up the seeds, or the plants that I bought from a farmer friend, which thank goodness I didn't try growing more of my own vegetables because that didn't work out very well. So I got my tomato plants, some herbs, got some parsley, thyme, and mint, those flowers I grew, and I did get some kale and cabbage. This is what mine should have looked like by now. Instead, because I had to do them over and over again, they're babies. And then I got a bunch of peppers from her and more tomatoes. Yay! So today I hope to get a bunch of weeding done and a bunch of planting. So I'm gonna start this morning. It's like 8:30 before the sun is too high and I get sunburnt again. Yeah, so here goes a lot of work. As you can see, this is going to be a big job to weed. I should say too that I'm not an idiot. I know this is what happens if you don't till, but my plan was to get a bunch of free wood chips from a tree service company. That's what we did last year. That's how we have mulched paths and stuff. And the soil was so nice underneath the wood chips. I noticed this spring, like in our walk paths and over here where the squash vines were that we had mulched, I was like, we should just do wood chips in between the plants too to mulch the weeds on the beds too. So I was planning on mulching pretty much everything except for where we were direct seeding things like the lettuce and carrots and stuff. But turns out everybody's gardening this year and mulch is in very high demand. So we are on the list to get mulch, but probably not till later in June. So for now, I actually have to weed. Okay, how long did that take? 7 minutes. That was one bed, just using the pitchfork to loosen the soil so I can pull weeds faster. And here we go. Now time to weed. On the other side of the garden, when I was weeding yesterday, I had laid out the cardboard to throw weeds onto, and that's actually holding the cardboard down. So then it actually will work as a mulch being held down. So I'm going to lay out this cardboard on this side of the garden. This is 5 feet with no garden bed, that's just designated for squash vines and cucumber vines. So I'm going to cover that with as much as I can with the cardboard and throw weeds onto it, and then the weeds will die in the sun and hold down the cardboard so that no new weeds grow up there. And bam, it's done. Now time to weed. I don't think I'm gonna film all this weeding. It's not gonna be that exciting even if I speed it up, but I'll show you a before and after. How about that? And then we'll plant. We'll plant stuff. That'll be more fun. Before. Okay, so it's like 3 o'clock, almost 3 o'clock, and I'm still not done weeding. I've had to take a lot of breaks because my legs and back are tired from weeding yesterday. So I decided I'm just gonna stop with the weeding for today and move on to planting because I just checked the forecast again, and tomorrow it's supposed to rain. There's like a 99% chance of rain all day until like 5 p.m. Like, and starting at midnight tonight until 5 p.m. tomorrow. So I really want to plant what I can plant today so that it gets a nice rain and gets watered in. That'll help the plants get established, and I won't be able to do weeding or planting tomorrow in the rain. So I will show you what I got done for weeding. Before, basically just got the big weeds. So discouraging. I did actually message someone on Facebook that you can hire to till your garden in our town, but haven't had a message back. So after, I'm just like, no, this is too much. We'll see what happens. Planted some things already in between weeding just to lift my spirits. I'll show you what I planted already. Here's my little cabbages and kale. I already watered them in. And then little lettuces. These will be head lettuce. Instead of cutting them small as baby greens, I'm gonna give them more space and more time to actually form a head of lettuce. And I also planted this little morning glory to climb this pea trellis post. It's for Tim. Tim likes having morning glories in the garden because his mom always has morning glories in his garden, so it's kind of nostalgic for him. And I just put it here. There's already a trellis for it to climb, and it'll be right, it's like right by our gate for the garden, so it'll be one of the first things you see, which will be kind of cool. Alright, so I watered the tomatoes and peppers really good because that's who we're planting now. So I have a few things with me to get ready for planting. I have a measuring stick or measuring tool, pretty neat. And this is for spacing my plants. You can eyeball it, but I like to actually measure it because I'm not good at eyeballing it for certain things. So I think I'm gonna do my tomato plants 3 feet apart. So here's 2 feet, 24 inches. And that's what I did last year, but I pruned my tomato plants pretty heavy last year, which is when you cut off branches, so it's just like one stem. And there's different reasons for doing that. I think the main reason I did it, and the main one that I know about, is so that there's more air circulation around the plant, so there's less likely to be like fungal disease problems like blight, which can kill your tomato plants. Because, you know, if you don't do anything, they get really bushy and less airflow, more likely for blight, and more likely that your plants are gonna fail. So I'm trellising them a different way, and I'm gonna prune them a little lighter this year. So I'm gonna space them out more, maybe 3 feet. I'm just gonna see what 3 feet looks like. Oh, the other thing, before I do that, the other thing I have is my garden plans and a pen. Sorry, I keep looking at the screens to make sure my face is in here instead of looking at the lens. Last year I forgot to write down what variety of tomato I planted where, and I had like at least six different varieties last year, and I could only remember 2 of them. So, and it's important to remember where you planted what varieties, because if one doesn't do well or one does do well, you want to remember that so you can either don't plant the one that didn't do well next year, or keep doing the one that did do well. So I brought my garden plans to write down what varieties I plant where, so throughout the season I can pay attention to which ones do best and which ones we like best. Okay, so I have 20 paste tomato varieties. That's like the Roma type tomato that is best for sauce. It doesn't have a lot of juice. And then I have 3 cherry tomato plants. I don't have any slicers because you can just slice up a Roma tomato. We don't use slicer tomatoes often enough to bother to grow them. We just will cut up a Roma tomato if we're doing BLTs or something. And then we use the cherry tomatoes in salad and pasta salad and stuff. So, and then these 2 beds are 50 feet each, but I'm leaving the last 5. I could measure. The ends of the beds are going to be for the kale and cabbage. So it's not a full 50 feet. I'm trying to do the math of how I can fit all those Roma tomatoes in 2 beds. I shouldn't talk out loud. I should just stop recording and come back. Okay, so the tiller man just messaged me back that he's free later today. I'm hoping it's not going to be like $100 or something, because then I don't think we can do it. But I did do the math. I have, $35. Yay! Deal. I'm gonna go get cash. But I have 20 plants and about 75 feet of bed feet for Roma tomatoes, so that means I can give them like 3.5 feet. I'm just gonna do 3 feet though. So I'm gonna lay them out. I'm gonna lay them out, space them out, and then when I'm planting, they'll already be spaced out and I can just put them in quick. Was that all that I was gonna say? I remember the other thing. I was gonna say I'm putting these cherry tomatoes right here by the gate, because if you've ever grown cherry tomatoes, once they're going, and you kind of have to check them at least every other day, pick them, otherwise they ripen so fast and they will fall on the ground if you don't pick them. So putting them close to the gate, easy to access, easy to see. So do you guys remember a couple of videos back when we got all those fish? That's these beds. That's where we buried them. And I plant tomatoes pretty deep. I will take all these little branches off except this top. And I'll plant it all the way up to there. See, I took all those branches off. Now it's just this part. I'm gonna plant it that deep. I'm gonna try to dig a hole that deep at least. And the reason I'm doing that is because tomatoes, they will make roots. All these little hairs, I don't know if you're gonna be able to see them. Oh yeah, you see them? All those little hairs, those will turn into roots. I'm gonna go get a different trowel and maybe actually a shovel. So that's how deep I'm doing it. Right up to its neck. And by next week, it'll be twice as tall. Tim on his lunch break. guess the fish have decomposed already because I just found a scale. That's the only trace of the fish. That's kind of gross. Now I'm going to water them in, is what they call it. It's just watering the plant after you plant it to make sure that its little roots don't get dried out while it's still getting established in its new home. You hear that? That's my garden being tilled. Couldn't do it, couldn't do no-till, didn't have all the right stuff to do it completely, but that's okay. I can at least plant in these beds now. They were quite overgrown, as you saw before. Alright, so the garden is tilled. My no-till garden is only half no-till, and the other half is tilled. Before. And that's what it looks like now. I can breathe and relax now. The weeds are under control at this moment. Tim, on the other hand. Stop it. So the whole tilling thing was kind of a last minute decision, and I'm actually really grateful that I have community members like the guy who brought the fish to fertilize our tomatoes, and the guy that just came to till our garden. I messaged him like, it was like 3 or 4 p.m. like not that long ago, and he was able to come tonight and till this garden for me. I would have been not able to even garden those beds because I tried weeding them, and I was literally hurting myself trying to do that, weeding them by hand. And now they should be ready to plant soon. And Tim and I are gonna enjoy a bonfire and some beers and brats, like good old Wisconsinites. I just realized that we're having a fire right next to that house that was on fire.
Too soon.
Too soon?
Do you think the brats will roll off the grill on that angle?
Yeah, I think they might roll off. Yeah, we realized today that we don't have fire pokers. What's up with that?
It's not as bad.
That'll work. But we do have this grate.
Last time we used it, we have a tripod, and it's tipping, and all of our brats tipped into said fire.
Yeah, and we had company over too. It was like 9.
Brats.
Yeah, it was like 9 brats that fell in the fire.
Nope.
We grabbed them out. They were still good, kind of. Oh.
Just stay.
Well, I think it's time to relax and call it a night. So we will clean the pretzel out of our teeth and see you in the next video.